Good morning, everybody. Once again, you're most welcome to the first ever Energy Mukutano and to this discussion that we're going to be having this morning. My name is Innocent Kihika. I'll be chairing the panel, and I have got very interesting people that will be leading us in the discussion this morning from the private sector, from government, and from our development partners. We tend to forget our history so fast. We tend to forget the good things so fast. Over 20 years ago, and specifically 16 years ago, it was difficult to turn on a light consistently for 48 hours, at times even 72 hours. We had severe load shedding. The water levels of the lake were extremely low. We only had 2 plants that were generating power. Our installed capacity was just about 380 megawatts. Let's run down. Let's let's fast track ourselves and look at the situation right now. 20 years ago or 16 years ago, the hill across the central business district of Kampala was rumbling with generators. That was the noise in the air. That was a lot of pollution because of the generators. Just right down at Lugogo, we had massive generators that were generating power in order to keep the lights on. That was not enough. We had more generators in Mutundwe and others at Kira. Obviously, we're using diesel to generate power. We also now introduce heavy fuel oil. That was 20 years ago. To date, things have changed. The lights are on. You can no longer tell somebody, turn on the lights, and nothing comes on. The children who are born today do not know the word called load shedding. I used to feel sorry for my partners in Umeme. Every time the lights went out, everybody would yell Umeme. And that's the time their concession was just beginning. But that was not their fault. It was the environment. Things had gone down. Just a year ago, we had a crisis. The lake levels were up, and the lake levels are still up. There were safety issues at Naluvale and Chira to see at what point in time could the dams hold. We've got too much water, and the last I checked, the lake levels are still very high, except that people have now got used to the whole idea that the lake levels are now high. Last night, as I was preparing for this Mukutano, I was trying to look at the penetration of electricity as far as Uganda was concerned in the world and in Africa. I was happy to see that we are no longer in the list 10, because by the time I joined the electricity sector in 2005, we were one of the countries in the 10 list countries with penetration of electricity in the world. But there's one other thing we can say. Uganda is very generous with its data, whether it's in energy, whether it's in the medical area. We're very generous with our data, so we're not always so sure whether the statistics are correct. But fast forward again, we now have the NDP3, our National Development Plan. The policies obviously have changed. The policies we had 20 years ago, as far as the energy sector was concerned, are different from what we have today. When you talk about energy, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is the Albertine Graben. The first thing that comes to everybody's mind is Tilenga. The first thing that comes to everybody's mind is ECOP. But there's something that actually holds the backbone of our economy. It's the lights, it's the power. If we didn't have the power right now, we wouldn't be transmitting to the world all over. We wouldn't be having a virtual conference. If we didn't have the power right now, I'll be screaming my voice across this hall. Can you imagine this place with lanterns, without electricity? And that is something that the government realized in 2004 to 2007, that electricity was actually the backbone to our economy. And a lot has been achieved since then. So today we're going to discuss the policy. We're looking at energy as a fuel for economic growth in Uganda and the policy behind that. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome our first panelist, Mr. Moses Mungereza from the Ministry of Energy. Please put your hands together for him. Moses, I saw you around. Where are you? Oh, thank you, Moses. I did some work with Moses many years ago uh, in the ministry. And so we shall be having a good discussion as to where we were then and where we are now. Are things still the same way? Are we in a seesaw? Is the policy still the same? What's new in the policy? I'd also like to invite Joseph Enyimu from the Ministry of Finance and Planning and Economic Development. Joseph, where are you? Please put your hands together for him. With Joseph, we shall be having a lovely discussion as to the appetite, investment in the sector, and the role of the private sector, and the role of electricity in the economy. What does electricity give back to the nation on that? Also allow me to invite somebody from our development partners from the EU delegation to Uganda, Adriansen. She's over here with us. With regards to the electricity subsector, the EU is way up there. What lessons can we learn? What technical development are we having from the EU? We always used to fantasize the days when we shall always have an electricity auction market here, a power pool in the region whereby we'll be auctioning electricity all over the place, trading electricity like you're trading it on the stock exchange. Shall we ever get there? Is that part of the NDP 2040? We shall discuss that over here. And then last but not least, Mr. Celestino Babunji, the MD of Umeme. They've been keeping the lights on for most part of the big part of Uganda with a lot of difficulty. They do quite well, but the moment something goes wrong, the first thing that comes out of everybody's mouth, Umeme, why are the lights off? You're most welcome. Please turn on your mics so that everybody can hear what you have to say. Okay. All right. Okay. So the way we're going to do this, I might target the policymakers, but in case you have anything to add on to that before I actually come to you, please join into the conversation and chip in. So, when it comes to the policymakers, and in particular the Ministry of Energy, in as far as the NDF is concerned, oh, have I left out anybody? Sorry about that. Sorry? Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry, my apologies. Francis, my apologies. Private Sector Foundation. Francis, please come up. I had counted the tables and and the mics, and I thought everybody was on the table. My sincere apologies for that, and for the organizers over here. Yes, the private sector is quite important as far as we're concerned in the transformation of our economy. In as far as electricity is concerned, the PSU and together with the Ghana Manufacturers Association always like making so many demands to Umeme. And many a times they're like requesting that, we get power directly from the generators straight to the consumer. Moses, what is government's policy in the NDF, in our National Development Plan, in as far as electricity is concerned, the electricity subsector?
Thank you very much, Session Chair. My name is Engineer Moses Murengezi. I am representing the PS, Madam Irene Batewe. Irene should have been here by herself, but she sends apologies. but I'm in the sector as advisor to the Sustainable Energy Development Program. So, and I represent PS in this panel. So you're asking, what is government policy on energy today? The government policy is the policy of 2002. It remains the policy of government today. That policy highlights the need to have electricity or sustainable energy for the development of the people of Uganda. Within the power sector, the policy emphasizes increasing generation of electricity through both public and private participation. And under that policy, we see the private sector building the Bujagali power plant, which helped us a lot to overcome the load shedding which you just talked about. That load shedding was horrible, and the Bujagali really helped the government of Uganda to overcome that load shedding. However, as a private company, that came with its own issues, the tariff issue. Okay, so at one stage you want to increase generation, but at the other side, the consumption end, you need to support sustainable use of this electricity. And this sustainability includes affordability as well. So under that policy of 2002, generation was mainly privatized, put in private hands, and so was distribution and sale of electricity. And in the middle, we left transmission as a public company under UTCL. Chair, as Mr. Chika now, you know it very well because he used to be the company secretary for the transmission company. So he knows the issues there. Because at one side you have got the private companies doing the generation, and then at the distribution side, you also have distribution being handled by the private companies. The leader being Umeme, who is here with us this morning. Umeme, as a matter of fact, Uganda has right now about 5 distribution companies. But out of the 5, which include Umeme distributes over 90% of Uganda's electricity. So that is the perspective of policy, namely public participation as well as private participation. Private mainly in distribution and generation, but later on we see, because of the tariffs, electricity becoming too expensive, government comes in and begins building Karuma and Simba as publicly owned power generation companies. Why? The main reason was to address a tariffs. Because Bujagali tariffs was too high, beginning with about 13 cents, and that has been an issue, that this electricity become affordable. So we see government coming back to participate in generation by way of building Karuma and Simba. Simba is now in operation, and that has gone a long way in addressing the tariff issue. Chair, by way of policy, generation now is adequate. We have come from that side of load shedding to a situation of excess capacity to the tune of 1,200 megawatts generation against a peak demand of about 700 megawatts. So excess capacity also has its own issues because this energy must be paid for. So that excess capacity is from both public generation plants as well as private generation plants. Now, at the consumption end, at the both transmission and distribution, we still have a problem. That this generated electricity, the wish of government would be to see this electricity reaching the consumer. But actually, it's not reaching the consumer very well because of constraints in both transmission and distribution. I will leave constraints in the distribution, I think, to be tackled by my friend Celestino Omeme, so that he can raise the issues. But as far as the government is concerned, government as a policy would like to stimulate demand. How? Stimulate demand by way of putting in place industrial parks which consume a lot of power. Of recent, I think we had 4 industrial parks. That was Mukono, Iganga, Lugazi, and Namande. And that is estimated to consume about 200 megawatts. That was supported by China Exim Bank. But these industrial parks, as a policy, government will continue to handle these industrial parks so that we have more consumption. Also, rural electrification to increase access to electricity for all the people of Uganda under SDG 7. Under SDG 7, government targets to reach access for all by 2030. 2030 is very near. It's only 10 years from now. So we have a lot of work to do in order to make sure that all the people of Uganda get access to electricity by that date. Whereas I have said that generation capacity is now in excess of demand, but actually many consumers question that issue. Why? Because they see power going on and off, and they say, but government is telling us lies. It seems we are still doing load shedding. I was telling Celestino that, at my home in Kiwatule, I didn't have electricity the whole of last night. So that is the issues. The issue is that our distribution network needs a lot of investment in order to make sure that electricity can reach the people of Uganda in a sustainable way. Chair, let me stop there for the moment, but let me highlight another issue. Whenever we talk of energy, many people tend to focus their minds on electricity. But actually, when you look at Uganda's energy balance, close to 90% of Uganda's energy remains biomass. Close to 90% of Uganda's energy remains biomass. And that's an issue of deep concern. Whereas biomass is renewable, but the way we use it for cooking is not healthy. We would like to address that, to change that, and also encourage the people of Uganda to use electricity for cooking. I always tell people, but by the way, in the 1970s, we used to use electricity for cooking. People don't believe that you can use electricity for cooking. Of course you can. You see, Uganda's electricity is mainly renewable. It is mainly hydro, a bit of solar coming in. The non-renewable diesel generators are being phased out. It's very good renewable energy. And so we would like to begin encouraging people to begin using electricity for cooking. But for you to do that, this electricity must be reliable, it must be at affordable costs, and then people can begin hopefully shifting from using biomass to using electricity for their cooking. So those are the policy issues in place, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Moses. I'll get back to you shortly with regards to the policy. But let me go to your neighbor, Francis. You've heard what the government has said on the policy. We have so much power right now. The private sector should not be complaining. So, how have you taken this? How have you harnessed this? We've got excess power.
Thank you very much, Innocent, and thanks my colleagues, the panelists, colleagues who are here and also online. My name is Francis Tisirinya. I'm the Acting Executive Director of Private Sector Foundation Uganda. Thank you very much, my friend, Engineer Mulengezi, for giving us the policy perspective. I've heard you very well when you said that our capacity today is about 1,200 megawatts, I think. Yet the demand is 700, meaning that we have about almost half, 500 megawatts, which are not being used. Of course, for now, I think we might feel that we are somewhere, but we can very easily get backload shedding. I'll give you one statistic. If you look at the consumption of power in Uganda, it's about 215 kilowatt hours per person. But if you look at the average in sub-Saharan Africa, it's about 552. So our consumption is less than half what our colleagues in sub-Saharan Africa consume. I'm a little bit ashamed to say this, saying that maybe some countries, including Sudan, consume more power than Uganda. I think it's an area of concern. But if we did the right things, just like you said, we can very much ease the ramp up consumption of energy. So one area as a private sector foundation, which we think is very important for us to address, to drive consumption, is the area Engineer Mulengezi calls it affordability, and unfortunately that's what you put in Vision 2040. But we tend to think that if you talk about affordability, you really are forgetting that we are operating in a competitive environment. We would advise you as private sector foundation that our target should not be affordability. It should be tariff competitive. In other words, we should be in a position to compete with our immediate competitors. South Africa, which has US cents per kilowatt hour. China, 3 US cents. Egypt, 3 US cents. Kenya, 7 US cents. Ours is 11 US cents.
If I may interrupt, I'm not so sure where you're getting those figures from, and I'm not sure whether you're comparing oranges and lemons.
Yes.
But when we're talking about affordability, and I'll come down to the EU and also to Umeme, affordability comes in two ways.
Yes.
We're looking at affordability Omuntu wa wansi. Omuntu wa wansi is the ordinary person down in Rukunjiri, the ordinary person down in Nyagak, the ordinary person down in Kabong. If we push the power that side, can they afford it? Now, for the private sector, you are the manufacturers, you are the A-listers of Uganda. What do you mean? But you cannot compare the 4 cents, which is not probably cost reflective, to Uganda that has one of the most cost reflective tariffs in the region or in the continent on that. So what is your take on that? Because my question to you was, how has the private sector taken advantage of the availability of power? We've got excess power. Why aren't you not using it?
Yes, I think I was dealing with my first point. Much as we talk about affordability, it's a very good thing. But for us, we think we should talk about competitiveness, because it's pointless to tell somebody, put up your factory. They put it up, the conversion costs, which is dominated mainly by power consumption. All right? You don't want figures, but I'll tell you, in Uganda, 15% of production costs are power-related costs. That is for the large industries. For the small ones, it actually goes up to 35%. Now, if the power in Uganda is not competitive, it means I'll always buy goods that are cheaper from other competing countries like Kenya, like China, like South Africa. So to increase the utilization, first of all, let us deal with the issue of competitiveness. The second issue
Okay,
is
just a moment.
Yes.
Celestino, is the power in Uganda actually very expensive? Is it more expensive than the power in Kenya? I have been to South Sudan. I have been to Juba. The cost of power there is 26 cents, US cents.
I think from my perspective, this is also policy direction. As Engineer Murengeza has indicated, invite the private sector in to support government that was in real bad shape, right? Help in investment in generation, help private investment in distribution. And then our generation capacity was below 120 megawatts. Then private sector comes in, puts in more than 700 megawatts power. Yes, Jagali is expensive, but the cost of not having Jagali then would have been much worse. I remember the level of subsidies government was paying for thermal generation were incredibly high. Then you move along the way, government comes back to put in Isimba. That is the first public sector plant, I can say, built by government. Owen Falls, that's 1954 when Uganda was formed. The other important thing to note is policy again. 2012 government said we are no longer subsidizing. When you look at Ethiopia, for example, 50% of their cost is subsidized. Government buys down the tariff. Then, but again, as citizens, it comes back to you. The government is people. They'll come through tax regime, collect the same money, and subsidize the power for the manufacturer. Uganda policy direction 2012, government said no more subsidies to power costs. Policy, government policy. We want Uganda to have a cost-reflective tariff. That's government. And the study was done by the World Bank. It's only Uganda and Seychelles in sub-Saharan Africa where costs are somewhat cost-reflective. Large industrial, their tariff runs from 8 cents, 6, and if they produce at high capacity, they even go to 5. Medium runs from 9 to 7 cents. And if you look at it, it's an economies of scale. Utilize more of these plants, increase volume, the cost will come down. And that's why Engineer Murengezi was emphasizing the productive use of this power is fundamental. Can we move from bio cooking using electricity? That increases volume. Can we get more industries in? And when we reach a critical mass, the cost actually will come down. However, it's important to note that as we have seen through ECP, where government has the goodwill to say everyone should be connected for free, along the way, 1 year around the road, there's no fund.
The fact that energy is essential for the provision of essential services, and therefore, at the policy level, we need energy policies that speak to that. That at the end of the day, the Ugandan does feel the use of.
I know I won't wait long for my favorite song. I can tell by the way the sun's coming up from the clouds, and I hear the sound from the sky. Oh, trumpets and laughter. Yes, tomorrow it's gonna be a better day. Tomorrow it's gonna be a better day. Tomorrow it's gonna be a better day.
For us, improving lives is why we do what we do.
This right here is home. It is where I belong. I know I won't wait long for my favorite song. I can tell by the way the start, and I hear the start from the start. Yes, tomorrow it's gonna be a better day. Tomorrow it's gonna be a better day. Tomorrow it's gonna be a better day.
For us, improving lives is why we do what we do.
Election at the delegation of the European Union here in Uganda. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and represent the EU and in a way also the development partners. And thank you for the very interesting question. As you have mentioned, Uganda has been really a front runner in embracing power sector reform. It's seen by many countries in the region as a model with a fully vertically unbundled structure in generation, transmission, and distribution segments. Now we understand, of course, that time has come to engage in a second generation power sector reform to meet the evolving needs here in the country. Said by the chair, the aspects of policy, regulatory aspects, and legal aspects. So it's essential that this reform does not affect the credibility of the sector and the commitments by the development partners, but also financiers and private sector. So this is one of the messages that I would like to pass today. Of course, there are some other aspects that also deserve attention. If we want to drastically increase energy access, it was mentioned the imbalance between supply and demand. So we feel that it's important that we have a kind of national electrification strategy and master plan to guide the efforts of all the stakeholders involved in the sector, government, development partners, financiers, private sector, public entities, and beneficiaries, so that we all work under a common umbrella and with the same objective. I'm going a bit shorter because, of course, we are a bit tight on time, so I'm skipping some of the context I wanted to give. The last point maybe I wanted to touch upon as EU specifically is the importance to link the contribution of energy to development and industrialization to the sustainability aspect, the green agenda in a way. So as EU, of course, we are trying to get through our policy, which is the European Green Deal, climate neutral by 2050, 30% of our overall budget for the coming financial framework to spend on the fight against climate change. So our development bank, the European Investment Bank, to be transformed into a green and climate bank. So here specifically in Uganda, we will also be working on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and the fight against climate change in our upcoming programming period. We will be putting energy at the core of our work, notably through the work we will do on green cities, on urban mobility, on street lighting. We talked about alternative cooking fuels. We will be looking at mobilizing and leveraging private sector investment in critical infrastructure, electricity, transmission, distribution infrastructure, but also digital and energy efficiency. And we will definitely use our full toolbox, the toolbox we have, which is not only the traditional project approach, but also in schemes and blending grants and loans. We have currently a portfolio of over 100 million of euros in the energy sector specifically, projects we are supporting already. Some are already blending grants and loans with a leverage factor of 1 to 10, a ratio 1 to 10, so leveraging 1 billion of investments from private sector and public sector. So I don't know, with this, I have touched upon a few messages that seemed important to us in the framework of this discussion. I have touched a bit upon your specific question on the reform of bundling, unbundling. I think as development partners, to come back specifically on that point, we feel this proposal requires maybe some more reflection, and we stand ready to support the ministry and the government as a whole in this exercise by providing some analysis that could be useful. So I hope I have more or less touched upon the most important points. I know we are tight in time, so I will leave it to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol, and I still need him here. But there's one issue as we're moving into, but many a times we see this lost in consultation. Consultation for this, consultation for that, and we don't see it trickling down to the actual implementation and actual action. Is this something that we hope to be seeing in the years to come?
Thank you for the question. I think that we go beyond consultations. I hope so. If it's not the case, there's something we have to change, definitely. I think we can show some concrete achievements and outputs of the support we have been providing through a number of our initiatives together with our German colleagues, for example, KfW. We're doing quite a lot on street lighting to put in place and sign in the coming weeks as well with Ministry of Finance. We have the solar plants, the biggest solar plants in Uganda, actually, which have been financed with EU contributions. So we have some concrete outputs that can really trickle down, as you say, to the end beneficiaries. Of course, we will continue to work this way. There's the infrastructure part. The policy component remains important in our view, because of course it provides the umbrella and the strategic framework for us to work and to push also policy reform and to contribute to that exercise together with government. But yes, we will try to work on both aspects, the policy context, technical assistance for concrete infrastructure in the course of the coming 5 to 7 years, which is our new programming framework, which we are currently discussing together with the government of Uganda.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and you're free to leave anytime you
Thank
feel
you.
wish
I'm
to
really
do so.
sorry, but I have to.
All right. Ministry of Finance, you've been quiet. And from the policy you've heard from the Ministry of Energy is that the projects still have to run. Finance still have the appetite for the private investments in infrastructure projects in the sector, whether it's in power projects, power stations, transmission lines, distribution lines. You've just seen that we've just heard of the parish model. And when you're talking about the parish model, my thoughts about it is that we've got to have the last mile down to each parish in the country. Is the appetite still there for that?